Open the maid's bag, Lyra sneered. Filth like her probably hides toilet rags, not anything worth stealing. Laughter burst through the marble hall, echoing off the high ceilings. Hundreds of military cadets stood watching, entertained by the humiliation of one woman. Lyra clutched her frayed gray bag, but it was yanked from her hands and thrown to the floor. The contents scattered, stale bread, debt notes, and a crumpled old photograph. "Look at that," one cadet sneered, grinding her heel into the photo. "Born from the gutter, you're not even fit to polish a soldier's boots." Then, from the pile of spilled items, something slid free, a folded piece of fabric that caught the chandelier's light. Golden stars gleamed in perfect rows, the insignia of a general. The laughter stopped. The man who had laughed the loudest stepped back, face draining of color as he read the name stitched across the collar. American Kestrel, commander of Hellion. Lyra didn't move. Her face stayed calm, no tears, no rage, just a still, cutting silence that made the room feel colder. Her fingers twitched once, almost unnoticeably. The torn photo beneath the cadet's heels showed a young Lyra, maybe 10 years old, standing beside a man in uniform with his arm around her shoulders. No one noticed. They were too busy laughing. A captain in the back, quiet, watchful, did. He stared at the photo longer than anyone else. The academy hall was grand and polished, its banners and marble designed to make people feel small. Lyra didn't belong here, not to them. She was just the janitor, the girl in worn-out sneakers and a gray sweater, pushing a mop while the cadets strutted in crisp uniforms. Lyra Dorn, their ringleader, stepped forward, heels clicking against the floor. Sharp cheekbones, sharper tongue, and a family fortune to match. She snatched Lyra's bag off the floor again and held it up like a trophy. "Let's see what else this nobody's hiding," she said, smiling for the crowd. Before she could dump it again, a young cadet, barely 19 and desperate to impress, pointed at Lyra's shoes. "Those sneakers are falling apart," he said loudly, his voice trembling with false confidence. "Bet she can't even afford laces." The laughter swelled. He kicked the loose sole of her shoe. Lyra didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed on him. "You done?" she asked quietly. The boy froze. The crowd laughed, but this time not at her. Lyra appended the bag again. A few coins clattered across the tiles. A half-eaten apple, a cracked leather notebook. She flipped it open and read aloud in a mocking tone, "Jackot thou na." The crowd roared. "What's this? You think you're going to be somebody?" The laughter was vicious, a pack smelling blood. Another cadet kicked the coins across the floor. "Bet she stole those from the vending machine." From the corner, an older janitor watched, her hands tight around her mop handle. She'd seen Lyra work in silence night after night. She took a step forward, ready to intervene, but Lyra gave her a single look, calm and unreadable. The woman froze. Lyra crouched, picking up the coins one by one. When her fingers brushed the torn photo, she paused. The man in it had her eyes sharp, unyielding. She slipped it into her pocket. Lyra noticed. "Oh, you gonna cry over your little picture? Who's that, your imaginary dad?" The crowd laughed again. Lyra looked at her, voice steady. "It's just a photo." The laughter faltered. A senior cadet leaned in, grinning. "Maybe it's her boyfriend from the slums." Lyra's eyes flicked to him. "You sound like you'd know." His grin faded. Then came the sound of boots striking marble. Colonel Darien Vale entered the hall. Silence followed. His cold, commanding presence filled the space. "We hire too many strays to clean these floors," he said, his voice icy. The cadets laughed weakly, unsure. Darien's eyes locked on Lyra. "Pick up your trash and get out." One cadet, eager to please him, mocked, "She probably lives in a cardboard box." She nudged the torn photo with her boot, smearing dirt across the man's face. Lyra's hand twitched, but she only bent, picked up the photo, and wiped it clean. "Why is she even here?" the cadet went on. "She's dragging down the academy's standards." Lyra stood, looking at her. "Standards," she said softly, and the girl stepped back. The laughter was gone. Lyra gathered her things with quiet precision, zipped her bag, and walked toward the door. As she passed a group, One cadet stuck out his leg to trip her. She sidestepped smoothly and kept walking. Outside, she paused by a window. The academy flag shimmered under sunlight. For a moment, her shoulders sagged. Then she straightened again. Inside the hall, Captain Thane Rohr picked up her discarded bag from the trash. Inside was an old watch, heavy military issue. Etched on the back, CK01. Darien noticed. He crossed the floor and snatched it from Thane's hand. "Where did you get this?" Lyra turned. "It was my father's." Darien's face paled. "She's lying," a lieutenant muttered. "No way a janitor has something like that." "You sure about that?" Lyra said softly. Alara forced a laugh. "Probably stole it from a museum," but her voice cracked. Thane said nothing, but he was studying Lyra carefully. The calm in her face wasn't the calm of fear. It was the calm of someone who'd seen war. Darien pocketed the watch. "We'll look into this," he said, trying to sound in control. Lyra said nothing. She just walked away. The next day, the academy buzzed with tension. Alara wasn't done. She staged a public bag check in the Great Hall. "Let's make sure our janitor isn't stealing," she said, smirking. The cadets cheered. Lyra stood in the center, silent, as they dumped her belongings again. Torn scarf, old passport, bread wrapped in a napkin. "This is what she carries," Alara laughed. "Pathetic." A female officer sneered. "This is why we don't let just anyone in here. She's a walking embarrassment." Lyra met her eyes. "Then why's your hand shaking?" The officer froze, her pen dropping to the floor. Alara grabbed the folded uniform again, the one with Lyra Kestrel's name. Before she could mock further, Darien stepped in. "That's enough," he said tightly. He took the fabric, his fingers brushing the gold stars like they burned. "This doesn't belong to you. Pretending to be a Kestrel, disgraceful." "I never said I was pretending," Lyra replied quietly. The words silenced the room. Thane noticed something in the stitching, microscopic codes he'd seen before in Cashin's command uniforms. Only his family knew them. Darien quickly folded the fabric and tucked it under his arm. "You're finished here." Lyra stepped closer, voice calm. "I know what you're afraid of in that uniform, Colonel." Darien froze. A sharp beep cut through the air. A giant screen on the wall flickered to life, lists of names, dates, and dollar amounts. Darien's name at the top. Millions missing. The hall went dead silent. A tech officer fumbled at the controls. "It's a glitch," he stammered. Alara's voice rose in panic. "She planted that. She's lying." But cadets were stepping back from her. Lyra picked up her bag and turned toward the door. "Arrest her," Darien shouted. Guards grabbed Lyra's arms, cuffing her. Cameras flashed. Alara pulled out her phone, live streaming. "Look at this traitor, pretending to be a Kestrel." A journalist scribbled furiously in the back, eyes flicking between Lyra and Darien. Lyra didn't resist. She looked at Thane, steady, unshaken. Then the hall radio crackled. "All units stand down. This is General Lyra Kestrel." The massive doors swung open. Cashin stepped in alive, uniform torn but eyes blazing. The hall froze. Phones dropped. Alara's live stream caught every second. "Release her," Cashin said. The guards obeyed. Lyra rubbed her wrists but didn't look away from her father. Cashin turned to Darien, holding up a tablet. "You're under arrest for embezzlement, treason, and the cover-up of my death." The screen flashed again. Darien's crimes, broadcast live across the nation. Alara collapsed, sobbing. I didn't know who you were." Lyra stepped back from her. "You didn't care to." Guards cuffed Darien. His shouts echoed down the hall as they dragged him away. Cashin faced the cadets. "Honor doesn't come from a uniform," he said. "It comes from doing what's right, especially when no one's watching." He pinned a new insignia to Lyra's shoulder. The gold gleamed under the light. "From now on," he said, voice firm, "you are Lieutenant Colonel Lyra Kestrel." The room stayed silent. No applause, no words, just awe. Lyra didn't smile. She nodded once. Alara's sobs were the only sound. left as the hall emptied. By nightfall, the video had gone viral. Clips of Lyra mocking Lyra spread across every platform. Her family's defense contract collapsed. Her name trended for all the wrong reasons. Darienne's career was over. The cadets who joined and faced quiet consequences. Lyra left the academy that day, her father beside her. Reporters crowded the gates, shouting her name, but she didn't stop. She climbed into a black SUV, the new insignia glinting in the sun. Weeks later, she stood before Congress, cameras flashing. A senator leaned forward. "Do you really think you're tough enough to carry your father's legacy?" Lyra looked him straight in the eye. "I'm not here to carry it," she said. "I'm here to finish what he started." The chamber erupted in applause. Outside, the Hellion flag waved in the wind. Lyra Kestrel walked away, steady, quiet, unshaken. Because real power doesn't come from titles. It comes from truth. And the courage to stand alone, until no one can ignore you anymore.